Welcome to today's webinar, Annual Report Sections O through S. This live webinar is being recorded for future use, and KDLA is sponsored by the Library Science and Technology Act, and we thank the Institute of Museum and Library Services for their sponsorship of this webinar. Today's speaker and presenter is Bobbie Augspurger. Bobbie is the State Data Coordinator for the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives, and she will also be joined by one of our regional consultants, Caleb Conover. Bobbie, you can take it away.
Okay, welcome. So we are on our final webinar for annual report sections O through S. And what this will do will help us wrap up the report, and we'll talk about next steps after that. And Caleb, is there anything you would like to say before we get started?
Hello. That's all I've got for right now, but looking forward to it.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so if you have any questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat and we'll get to them as we see them. And let's rock and roll on this. Okay, the first thing that we're going to cover is log in with username and password. Each Kentucky Public Library and regional consultant is assigned one. So for me, it would be bobbie.augspurger@ky.gov is where you contact if you did not get your username and password. For fiscal year 25, I will be sending those out to each library in this next few days. And so keep an eye out for that. And this is the end of May right now. So keep an eye out for that dated the end of May. All right, so there are two portals. The Collect portal is the survey portion where you input information. And that is going to be different URL than the Connect portal. And the Connect portal is where you can look at all of the data. So if you needed to see salaries based on a certain size of library, you would go to this Connect. The Connect is a darker background and the Collect is a whiter background, which you can see on the screenshots put there. Let me get my little arrow pointer here, and you can see the Collect is a lighter background and Connect is the darker, and these two different URLs, but they should have the same username and password. If that's not true and you're not able to get into one or the other, throw an email to me or to Nicole Gieske, and we will get that information out to you ASAP. All righty. Navigation. So when you're going to navigate on the screen, you will see a next button, which navigates you to the next page, a previous button, which navigates you to the previous page. Save, you want to save your most recent changes. Please save often. I do not know how your computer speed is, but I do know that I've had questions about information not showing up, and it's because the system actually timed out after input delays or work delays, if you will. So you may need to log back in and make sure your work is really being saved. Also, available this year is the option to hide last year's answers. So the hide responses provided the previous year, I recommend seeing these. It's really nice to have a temperature check seeing last year's answers compared to this year's answers. And if there's a big difference, then you can add a note as to why that number is so much bigger or smaller. We do have the flag option. The flag is white. You are able to, I'm able to, the regionals are able to change it to red. So when we click it to red, that means there's going to be a question. Maybe you have the question, your regional has a question, I have the question, but it lets us know we need to readdress that. So that's what the flag is for. It's just a heads up flag, kind of a big sticky note that's digital. Next, we have the note option. Each survey question has the note feature. And I would like for you to think about this note as a gift to your future self, to your regional, and to the SDC, explaining why. Why is the number so much bigger or smaller? What specifically caused this number to notably change from last fiscal year? And these will also be required in error reports. So when you all, as the library, the AE, the main library, submit the completed survey, an error report is generated. Each library has to validate submitted data, which means, yes, this is correct. No, there's a problem. I mistyped it, or I need to double check that. And so they do that on the error report by letting you add notes or going back in and changing the data. I've seen on the notes, yes, this number is higher. Okie dokie, but we need to know why it's higher and what specifically caused the number to change. So if you could add just a smidge more than just regurgitating, yes, it's higher, yes, it's lower. It doesn't have to be anything long and grand. It can be just a sentence. Yes, it's higher because the library was closed due to flooding for 3 weeks. Or, the expenses were higher because we had to replace the DVD collection set when a car crashed through the front window. Whatever the reason, just give me a little bit more detail to help explain it. This also keeps the regional and myself from having to reach back out when we are going through the data a month, weeks, several months later. I submit the PLS in January, February timeframe. And so if you're done on time in the end of August, that is a big gap between when I submit the PLS and have gone through all of this information to remember why it was changed. So think of that note feature as a gift to all involved. There's also a history button. This feature shows the response given by year for the last 5 years. If you gave a response, you can click on that history and it will show it year by year for the last 5 years, which is nice to see if you're trending up or down, and helps you just justify, yeah, this amount is correct, or it's not in the ballpark at all. So I need to go back and look at it. Okay, also we have on the navigation area, we have the status. The status screen shows your edit checks and answered questions and flagged questions, which we just talked about on the previous slide. So you can make sure those are all resolved by clicking on status. Then you can export, and this automatically downloads your annual report data as is. So what's in there as of that moment is what is exported into a PDF file for you. You can also print. So for printing, I set my printing preferences for survey reports or annotation reports. I like to do both. So I actually put print entire survey. I click on that one. I click on include annotations with current and last year's data, and then it shows a PDF report for you. So you can download that format. File print is print straight out or print to PDF. So those two options are there on the print. You will see a survey list button up near the top. This provides a list of your annual report surveys for your library from many, many moons ago. It goes way back because we've used this survey reporting vendor for a long time. At the end of your report, you will also see submit. Submit lets you submit the completed survey. You will submit the completed survey, and then an error report may pop up that you have to address, and you may have to end up actually fixing that and then resubmitting the data. So you have to address all of your error checks before the survey will fully submit. If you're wondering what those edit checks are, you can go right back up here to status and then click on the edit checks. Okay, the dashboard, regionals. This is your home-based screen for all your libraries in your region. You can select reviewed, unlock, relock, approved. The regional will go through the data that is provided by each of their libraries in their region. If there's a question, they will flag it, they will email, they will reach out to try and help determine the correct answer or answer any questions so that the survey is complete before you hit submit. The regional can also unlock the data to allow libraries to add notes or rework their information. And then when everything is correct, as best as the regionals work through it, then they will select the approved box. And so that means everything's good to go and all error checks are addressed. That will also allow me the visual of knowing, hey, it's my turn to go in there and start working with the data. The regional works with their regional data, the state data coordinator works with all 120 libraries. And so that starts the cleaning of data and double checking of information once the regional works through the process. At the end of each page, you can close the survey window, but I want you to be sure to save it first so you don't lose all that work you just did. All right, how are we doing so far? Can you throw me a thumbs up, shout a wave, or pop some questions into the comments or chat section? And Caleb, is there anything else you would like to add?
Nothing from my end.
Okay. So I'm not seeing any questions or any chats popping up. So let's go ahead and go to the next section. All right. So far, we have worked A through N sections, and we are now on section O for programs. So section O is pretty long, but you'll see the pattern of how things are laid out. Let me flip my little handout here. All righty, so the number of synchronous live on-site program sessions goes here. And I could read each of these to you, but I think you'll want to read them on your own. Under age 6, 6 to 12, young adult, you're going to put the program information here. Each program session is only going to be counted in one age category based on its primary target audience, okay? So you'll only count each program one time. So it's going to be under 6, age 6 to 12. Then we're looking at young adults. It goes on to adults, which is 19 and older, and multiple age levels. The multiple age level was new in fiscal year 2024. So you've seen it before, and now we have a baseline. So 2025 should be pain-free as far as that goes. Then we go down to 06. So section 06 should automatically sum up 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Whatever you put in there, it should total up here. Double check that this is totaling correctly. There were a few issues last year whenever I got to working with 120 libraries data where I had to go back through and validate that the 06 cell was actually totaling them up. So double check that that's correct. If it looks different than last year's may be wrong because like I said, I had to go through and fix a lot of those. So just double check that. There's a question, put a flag on it. On the note, if there's a big difference, you can say last year's did not auto sum correctly. It was fixed by the state data coordinator. You're in and out of that note 10 words or less. Okay, then we did on-site, now we're looking at off-site. Same options. In-person off-site program session, and it tells you what that event is. And we want to definitely have, it says to include the in-person program sessions that also have a virtual attendance option and count them as a single program session. So we're not going to duplicate any of that content. So it goes in one location. So once again, for off-site programs, these are live off-site. Under age 6, 6 to 12, young adult. Then we have adult and multiple age levels. Cell 012 is going to sum up 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. If it doesn't, once again, double check it, flag it, add a note. If it's not the same or even in the ballpark, maybe you no longer have a bunch of off-site programs and you hold them predominantly on-site. I've seen this happen when the program coordinator has an elementary or a bunch of preschools that they go out to and do programs with, and for some reason or another, they are now limited. So that's an easy note to add. Last year we had 3 elementaries we went to. This year we only have 1. Okay, next we have the number of synchronous live virtual program sessions. This is a virtual program. It's a planned event. It's streamed virtually. It can be viewed live as it progresses. which is also called live streaming. It doesn't matter what platform it's on, whether it's YouTube or another one, it's live streaming. Okay. Exclude program sessions that also have an in-person component. You don't want to count them both in the virtual program and in the in-person on one of those last two that we talked about. So remember, it only counts once. Okay, so we have the same age groups under 6, 6 to 12, young adult, adult, and multiple age levels. Once again, cell 018 should total the number of these up from 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So double check it is correct. Flag it if there's a question. Add a note if it's different. Maybe last year's is wrong. Maybe this year you're not doing so many virtual program sessions. Since COVID's over, I've seen a decrease in some virtual program sessions. So just add a little note there, and that is a gift to you, me, and the regional moving forward. And we do like our gifts. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here. We're in the middle of it. We are getting ready to do at Synchronous Live on-site programs. Do we have questions so far? Throw me a wave or a thumbs up if we're still doing pretty good. This is section O and P are pretty big. So I wanted to stop at the halfway point before you forgot your question or got too far along. Okay, it looks like we're in good shape. So let's go ahead and rock and roll forward. Attendance at Synchronous Live on-site programs. So these are live, they're on-site. We are going to break those down into the same age groups, under 6, 6 to 12, young adult, adult, and multiple age level. And once again, make sure the total is correct. If not, flag it, note it, and we will look at that and fix as we need to. So attendance, those are the people going. You're going to account all of the attendees to the program session regardless of age. So these are age specific. So 19 and older, you don't have to say 24 at 19, 13 at age 72. We don't have to ask them that. All righty, attendance at Synchronous Live off-site programs. Here we go. We're going to break it into the same age categories as all of the previous O sections. O30 should be a total of 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. Please double check it's in the ballpark, that it's correct. If not, flag it, note it, and we will dig into if anything needs to be changed by Baker and Taylor as far as their auto sums. We can have them fix this, but we don't know it needs fixed if we don't have a flag or a note here. And you can also email us. We like those too. And virtual programs. Here we go. Same on virtual programs. You do not want to count it in both virtual and if they're streaming in on one of the live programs. It's one or the other. So we don't want to duplicate those attendees. Same age categories. And it should total up in 036. It should be a total of 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35. Okay, if not, flag it, note it. And then we go to recorded programs. I have seen a decrease for several libraries because recorded programs really increased over COVID, and now maybe you've shifted focus. Just add a note. We've shifted focus from recorded programs from post-COVID to live in-person, live off-site, live virtual. Just add a little note here if there's a change in your recorded program presentations. And please keep in mind that the total views of these recorded program presentations are within 30 days. So we don't want to include numbers after those 30 days. I would, if you want to add that to one of your section M other statistics, you're welcome to add it there. But for our purposes, it's just that within 30 days, even if you're showing it after that. Okay. For the other platforms, count unique views or plays of each video or audio recording. We don't want to duplicate numbers. Okay. All right, and it looks like at least 1 minute of viewing for each video. So if it's 50 seconds or less, we're not going to count it. All right, I'm not sure about active as compared to passive programs. Was one of the questions that was received last year. Storytime Craft counts as active Section O program if it goes with Storytime. Storytime Craft counts as active if it has a facilitator. If you just have a craft out and you turn them loose without a facilitator, it doesn't go with Storytime, then that's going to be passive because they're going to do it on their own, by themselves, on their own time. It could even be passive, could be where they take a little brown paper bag of parts that they're going to assemble later. And they picked it up from a table that you have set up in your facility. So those are examples of active versus passive. Caleb, can you give us some more insight here?
The only thing I think I would add regarding this section as a former programming staff person is, since most of you that are filling in this information are directors or assistant directors or some sort of administrator, if you can have your programming staff to format the way that they record statistics to match some of the fields, they don't have to be the exact 37 or whatever designation. I think it'll make your life a whole lot easier because you're not having to come back after the fact to spend so much time compiling those statistics and then getting them divided into their different sections. So I've known some libraries that the director compiles and does everything. If you're able to kind of shop that out with some of your staff as they're doing the programs to get statistics recorded in their proper place, I think that will save you a lot of time and headache.
Excellent foresight. I like the strategy you included. Thank you so much, Caleb. Are there any other questions? Go ahead and add to the chat and we will get those addressed. If you think of them later, you can always reach out. I see no more questions. Let's go ahead and move forward to section P, self-directed activities, which are also called passive programs. We have the definition over here. Self-directed activity is planned independent activity available for a definite, can't say that 3 times fast, time period, which introduces participating individuals to any of a broad range of services or activities which directly provide information to the participants. I'm going to let you read the deets on that. Examples include DIY stations, craft activity bags, make and take activity kits, do science at home STEAM kits. This does not include informal services such as homework help. Count all activities, whether held on or off-site, that are sponsored or co-sponsored by the library. Be sure to exclude activities sponsored by other groups that use library facilities. Okay. Self-directed activities may also have a program component that would be reported in section O of the report. So if it's constructing objects versus a program about crafts. It gives you a little bit example down here. So we have P1, which is children under 12. So passive programs for children under 12. And then number of participants. Okay, so we have a question and we have a facilitated offsite, but based at the library program. It is a scavenger hunt that will be self-directed. If it is self-directed, that is passive. So it's going to be in section P. Excellent question. Okay, now we have young adult ages 12 to 18. And notice in section O, we had the toddlers, then the elementary, then the young adult. For section P, we just have the children, which is under 12, and now we're right on up to the young adult, 12 to 18, number of programs, number of participants, We roll on up, and it's all other ages. So notice these categories are a lot more condensed than they were in section O. All right, P7, total number of self-directed activities should total up P1, 3, and 5. Double check that is correct. You can look against last year's answer. If there's a question, flag it. Add a note if you need to explain or say add some rationale here as far as a difference, why it's higher or lower. And then the participants. It's the sum of P2, 4, and 6. Flag it if there's a question, add a note if there's a change that's somewhat significant. And significant, I can't say if it's going to be 12 or 20 based on your library. If you have 1,000 programs and 10,000 people and you drop down to 20 programs and 100 people, that's pretty big. But also, if you drop from 1,000 programs down to 900, that's still a significant number because you're looking at the participants too. So let's go ahead and be on the safe side and add notes as applicable. Okay, one question. Our question is about self-directed activities, passive programming in the P section. We have different crafts that we do for both children and adults of various ages. We do a craft at story time. The kids and or adults are assembling the craft and working on it themselves, but there is a staff person, also called a facilitator, who is there to help. We currently count as an active program. The question is, do we also count it as a self-directed passive program? If the craft is done at story time, it would only count as active since it goes with story time and has a facilitator. You don't want to duplicate numbers. Okay? All righty. Any other questions? Caleb, can you help us out with some insight?
I guess one question too here to be clear is that if the craft is part of story time, it's the story time is the program. That's what's being counted. It's not like story time is counted as a program and then the craft is counted as a separate program. Am I understanding that?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So it's all one big program. No
Yes.
other real insight here.
Okay. Excellent. And I see no more in the chat, so let's go ahead and move forward. Section Q, technology. Q1, number of internet computers used by the general public. We have the library's internet computers, laptops, and tablets, whether they're purchased, leased, or donated, used by the public in the library. Do not include computers that connect to the internet for a dedicated purpose, to access an OPAC or a specific database or to train the public or other purposes. And so we're going to add those numbers here. For Q2, enter the number of people given formal training, which are scheduled sessions by the staff to use electronic resources in the library. Informal assistance is not included in this total. Do not include training for the library staff. So those are the details here on Q2. A wireless network that lets library users make a connection to the internet using a laptop computer or personal device. Does the library provide wireless internet access, Wi-Fi, for patrons? And so you'll click on the drop down, yes or no. Or I think it's just yes or no. And then we have Q4, report the number of wireless sessions provided by the library wireless service annually. Count one session for each time a device connects to the library's network, regardless of the duration of connection. If possible, only count sessions for patron devices and exclude library devices, such as routers, access points, printers, public access computers that you've counted already up here in Q1. Let's see. If an annual count of wireless sessions is not available, you can count wireless sessions during a typical week or weeks using methods like the hardware logging or network scanning and multiply the count to represent an annual estimate. And so we've had estimates in other areas of the annual report. You want to avoid holiday times. You want to avoid vacation periods. You want a typical time, and you can choose 1 or 2 weeks in which the library is open at its regular hours. You do not want to artificially inflate those numbers or make them higher than they actually are, and you do not want to artificially make them lower than what they actually are. You want to your best estimate. Okay, so that's going to be Q4. And then Q5. Regarding the number of wireless sessions entered, is this an annual count or an estimate? So you have a drop down here, and you're going to choose CT for annual count or ES for annual estimate based on typical week or weeks. Okay, any questions on Q1 through 4? Okay, let's go ahead and move forward to Q5. We are bringing back the website visits annually. During fiscal year 24, we did not have this question, but we did have it prior to fiscal year 24. So we've only lost 1 year of data, which a lot of our libraries kept and added that information. It was determined to be a very valuable piece that was gotten rid of, and it was brought back. So report the number of sessions initiated by all users from inside or outside the library to the library website. In Google Analytics, you're going to go to Audience, Overview, and Sessions. Okay, so we are bringing back question 5, website visits annually. Any questions, thoughts? I see nothing popping up in chat. Any other questions for section Q? Caleb, anything you would like to add on?
Nothing to add here. Thank you.
Nothing in the chat. So let's go ahead and move on to section R, intellectual freedom challenges. R1, one question. The updated description was provided last year for fiscal year 24. I want to point it out again for fiscal year 25. A challenge is an attempt to remove or restrict materials based upon the objections of an individual person or a group. Record the number of incidents, not the number of titles. For example, if a parent group of 25 wanted to challenge the validity of 4 library books, you would count this as one intellectual freedom challenge incident. It would not be 25 because there's 25 people. It would not be 4 because there's 4 books. They submitted one challenge by 25 people on 4 books. Does that help clarify that? Okay, it looks like we have some thumbs up going on. So we did have a question, how does each library ensure that the complaint only counts once? Challenges that come through a consortium are counted only by the originating library. So if Jefferson County is that's where the complaint comes from, and it goes into the consortium, then only Jefferson County would count that. And so that's how we make sure that the complaint only counts once, especially in a consortium or individual library aspect. Any other questions? All right, let's go ahead and head on to section S, Planning and Evaluation, section S. So this S1 right here is, you're going to describe significant events, challenges, improvements, programs, collections, something that happened in the past year. It does not need to be an essay. What I would recommend is getting an outline of this S1 ready before you even start the annual report, because as you go through each section of the annual report, you'll want to add notes saying, oh, here's Here's what happened with the finance issues. Here's what happened with the collection. Here's what happened with the programming. And you've got your thoughts kind of in a row before you even start on the annual report. So you're able to add those notes. And as you're digging into the data for each of those sections, you may want to add more details that you will come up with a nice final copy here for S1. And so that's my recommendation, is to get an outline for this right here before you even start your annual report. That way you have your ducks in a row and you can add on them and make sure you haven't missed out, adding important notes as you're doing your annual report. The person that has completed the report by, their name goes here. Does your library collect a statistic you think that other Kentucky libraries should collect? Please add that here. And then any notes for the survey administrator. Was this an easier to complete report? Were there sources of irritation that you think can be streamlined? I know that for fiscal year 25, the hours open to the public, we changed how that looked. And so instead of saying Monday, we opened at 8 a.m. and closed at 5 p.m. and this totaled this many hours. Tuesday, we shortened it down to Monday, you were open this many hours. Tuesday, you were open this many hours. And so that came directly from this feedback that was provided. So please include feedback and any ideas on how to make things better right here. And then once again, save, save, save. Okay, section S. Before I get into that, are there any other thoughts or additions or questions? Caleb?
Nothing on my end.
Okay, and it looks like we have smiley faces and thumbs up in the chat. So let's go ahead and move forward. Now that you have finished that report, and you've saved it, you're going to get error flags, potentially, extensions and error flags. So here's some Q&A. Before you can do your final submit, you have to address every single error question or error report element. So can I get an annual report extension? No, there is no extension. Per the statute, it's due 60 days after the close of the fiscal year, which means August 27th, I believe. Question, I finished my report and tried to submit. It is flagging some of my answers as unfilled or unanswered, but the data is in the survey. If that happens, you need to provide a narrative for why these numbers are so different than last year. Add notes to the final page, S questions. Once filled in, you should be able to save and submit. So yes, it will flag if you have not added pertinent notes, and also if you have not answered each question throughout the survey. Edit checks have to be resolved before your full submission is allowed. Then your regional consultant, we talked about this at the beginning, will review the data and let you know if extra information is needed, if we need to look at some data again. Once everything is square with the regional consultant, they will say, hey, you can go ahead and get your approval signature, and the regional will then lock the survey and say that it's good to go. Then the state data coordinator then goes in, and then I work with all 120 libraries data submissions and go through each single one to see if there's anything that's standing out that needs to be addressed before I download the data and start working with it for the PLS. Next questions, post-lock. So you've gone through it and you've finally gotten it locked and you have all the error questions addressed. Here's some of the post-lock questions. Do we need to send a hard copy through certified mail as we have in the past? I just need the original signature authorization form through certified mail, not a copy of the report, because we can print the report out on our end. We are working on setting up DocuSign so the board president or the member can digitally sign the authorization form. That's in process now. So just a heads up, we do have to have an original signature. And then this goes to our archives forever and evermore. Next question. The number of hours the bookmobile was open on the previous annual report is wrong. The error was made when getting the average per month rather than per week. That made our numbers artificially high last fiscal year. How do I change last year's data? I'm sorry you can't, but you can make a note of it to explain these exact words in the notes section for the bookmobile hours. We are unable to make changes after the fiscal year data has been submitted and finalized in the Federal Public Library Survey. And I have had people come back after the Public Library Survey and say, and that's that we're talking in the next calendar year, and say, hey, this is wrong. I really want to fix it, but we cannot go back in. Once it's done, it's done. Sorry. And our next question. Do I need to retain copies of the work papers associated with the annual report? How long? What's the series number? What about door counts? Here we go. We recommend permanent retention of the annual reports. You remember you can keep a digital copy and or a hard copy based on Kentucky State Archives and Records Act and the retention schedule for Public Library and Library Board. It's located right here, and that's updated every year. Door counts are on the annual report, so you don't need to keep this separately. And that's something to think about on the other statistics. The ILS record should be retained for 1 year per series L6972 on the public library schedule. You only have to retain it in one format. And then the annual report itself falls under L4957 series on the general local government schedule, and it is a permanent retention. So the annual report is permanent. Reports from department heads and door count records, I believe, would fall under L4956, which is destroyed when no longer needed. So that helps guide your retention of records and the record retention questions. Okay, before we move forward, any other post-lock questions? Throw me a thumbs up if you're still alive out there. Oh, we look good. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at our 7 good reasons to complete your annual report. I would like to remind you, state aid has not been eliminated from the statute, and its attempts are being made to bring it back in some form. Remember, you're required to have that annual report under statute if you operate any of these. And that's basically every public library in Kentucky. So you're required to by Kentucky statute. Also, we don't want to inhibit your library's ability to receive grant money. This last year, I can think off the top of my head, I can't remember, it's 1 or 2 libraries that had to complete this information, and they had not provided the authorized signature page, so they had to do that months later in order to get grant money. So the authorized signature is a part of the reporting process, and so we need to wrap it up with the bow so you can get your grant monies in a timely fashion. We want you to get all of those monies. The annual report allows us to do comparisons between your library and others, both inside and outside of Kentucky. So if you need a salary adjustment, where are you going to look? How does your circulation compare to other libraries? These are all questions that we need to know about and have a good idea of what's the trending average. And so having this data done by every library helps us. And also, if you receive any service from KDLA or participate in anything funded by federal funds, like these district meetings and professional development, this includes KYVL and the Courier, Ancestry.com, summer reading programs, all of that. We have to have these reports in. So these are good reasons to get it done in a timely fashion. And let's see, 30 years ago, no state has ever failed to submit the PLS information. The Public Library Survey is all of Kentucky libraries' information at the federal level. And we don't want to be the first. So definitely, besides money, services, and information, we don't want to have that little tarnish on our reputation. Okay, any other questions? Caleb, would you like to share anything else?
I guess just to reinforce the importance of having those statistics to be able to have some comparisons, like you mentioned in the slide. Compensation levels, that's been one of the biggest topics in my region since I started in this position, is creating pay scales or adjusting compensation levels. And every library I know of has been using the annual statistical report to kind of base some of their updates on. And I probably had no less than half of my entire region reach out directly just to say, hey, please send me a copy of that, the report as soon as it becomes available. So it is a very useful tool.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, if there's no other questions, or if you think of questions later, you're free to email your consultant, to email me. And thank you so much to Continuing Ed and our sponsors for helping us through this annual report series. Fist pump in the air. Woohoo, we made it. So thank you, and have a great afternoon. Mr.